All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's PD with IDOE informational webinar on the Indiana Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency, or COMP for short. I am Chelsea Isley. I'm an English learner and dual language specialist at the Indiana Department of Education, and I am joined today by Erica Spomberg. I'll let her go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I will be in the chat, putting links and doing my best to answer any questions, but Chelsea will talk a little bit more about how we can ask questions and make sure they get answered as we go along today. Thanks.
Thanks, Erica. And then we're also joined today by digital learning specialist Alicia Four, Matt White, and the 5-star team who are going to be helping us with the meeting logistics and making sure that technology is our friend throughout the presentation. So thank you all again for joining us live today, or if you're watching on demand, hello from home, and let's get started. So talking about those tools for today's presentation, we're going to be sharing a lot of information fairly quickly, but I want to make sure that all of you attending live have the chance to ask your questions as well. So my favorite part about Google Meets is all of the tools, obviously, and the fancy backgrounds. And for today's presentation, we're going to ask that you use the Q&A function to share any questions or comments that you have. So you'll click on the triangle, circle, square logo, and then click on Q&A. And once you do that, a box like this will pop up there, and it will allow you to ask a question. And then there's even an option to ask anonymously if you'd like. And as you can see on our example here, once someone has left a question or a comment, you can use the like feature if you have the same question. That will let us know that it's a popular question and can kind of help avoid duplicates in the Q&A. If you are watching the session on demand, a list of the questions and the answers will be posted under the video in the Learning Lab. So for today's agenda, we're going to look at the definition of COMP in code and then the history of the program in Indiana. We're going to give a brief overview of how to implement COMP and the data reporting that is required at the end of the year. And then we'll wrap up by answering your questions from the Q&A. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the Indiana Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency is an award that is established in Indiana code that is made by a participating school corporation, charter school, or accredited non-public high school to celebrate and indicate a student has reached a high level of proficiency in one or more languages in addition to English. So earning the Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency is beneficial for all students, whether they are world language students, English learners, or heritage speakers. COMP offers external motivation for students and validation for their efforts to learn another language or multiple languages. It prepares them for a globalized workforce and can give them an advantage with college readiness as well. For our English learner students and heritage speakers, this award can be especially impactful, providing academic validation of their home language and can also offer them up to 6 world language credits without the need to take the coursework, which creates room in their schedule for alternative electives or other classes. I can tell that some of you perked up at the sound of additional high school credits, automatic credits, so we're going to look at that more in depth in just a moment. So let's take a look at the National Seal of Biliteracy then and now. So the National Seal of Biliteracy was established in 2013, and Indiana officially enacted the Indiana Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency, COMP, in 2015. On the left here, you can see how Indiana truly was an early adopter back in 2015, and then on the right, you can see how far the country has come as a whole in 7 years since then. So a question that we often get asked is, what is the difference between the Seal of Biliteracy and the Indiana Certificate? By choosing to implement a certificate rather than a seal, schools are able to use a broader list of assessments and celebrate students at any point in their high school career once they meet those eligibility requirements. Indiana also chose to include the title of multilingual proficiency instead of biliteracy to honor and promote the idea of speaking multiple languages rather than just 2. So now let's take a look at how you can implement the Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency at your high school or district and what that implementation entails. So here you can see kind of a broad level overview of comp implementation, a year at a glance, if you will. So starting in August, IDOE will open a job form to sign up to participate in comp. This is a step that must be completed every year, and we really tried to pare down this process starting this school year to streamline the information that we request by making it simpler in the beginning to sign up. So we're hoping that will make it easier to sign up, and then we can do the data reporting at the end. So later in the year, IDEA, we will host an informational webinar. Welcome. Hello, everyone. And in these sessions, we'll highlight the updated data and information from the past school year, review steps for implementation, and then answer questions from the field. During the school year as well, you're going to help prepare your students and facilitate those language assessments, which we'll look at here in a minute. And then in March, the participation job form will close and IDOE begins to prepare the certificates template. The deadline to sign up to participate will be March 1st each year. So Erica will share that link in the chat for us if you are already excited to sign up right now without knowing what it entails. That's totally fine. Then in April, we'll use the contact information from the participation job form to send out the editable template with instructions for its use. So around this time, there's only a couple of months left of school. So that's when you'll plan for your student celebrations. And then once the school year ends, you have until September 1st to report your comp data to IDOE via a different job form. So that has not yet been created or opened. We're not there just yet. So if you'd like a more detailed version of this timeline, we just published a new year at a glance document on the comp website, like yesterday, hot off the presses. And Erica will share that link for you as well if you'd like to keep that. You're all in the know now. So let's look at the student requirements. What do students need to do in order to earn comp? So for a student to achieve comp, there are 3 requisites. First, students must earn 6 world language credits through coursework, with a little asterisk there. We'll come back. The second requirement is that students also must pass an approved external language assessment at the intermediate high level of proficiency. Now, if a student is already proficient in another language when they enter high school, so maybe your English learners, maybe your heritage speakers, they can take the language assessment as early as their freshman year and automatically earn 6 world language credits. The students can take that language assessment at any time in their high school career. You just won't give them the achievement of comp until their senior year on the transcript. The last requirement for comp is that students must earn at least 8 credits in English language arts. And this section at the bottom, number 3, is in blue because recently there are some changes being made to the ruling and code. So previously the assessment that was required was ISTEP, but that's now been broadened to include any English language arts graduation qualifying exam. So for many schools, this is now the SAT, but this also allows for more assessments to be included, such as the ASVAB for other opportunities. So for English learners as well, this is a new change, an overall score of 5 or higher, 5.0 or higher on WIDA Access at any time in their educational career will also meet this requirement. So these are very exciting changes that we love to see because more students will have access to earning the certificate. So here is a diagram that shows how all teachers can help support the implementation of comp with their students. So both world language teachers and content teachers can help build proficiency and oracy in the classroom and promote student self-reflection on their language acquisition. World language teachers, you also have the ACTFL proficiency levels available for use in the classroom and can hold students accountable for high percentage of target language use as well. Then in the middle, it's up to everybody to promote, promote, promote. Students cannot work to achieve an award that they don't know exists. So today, I know that many of you in attendance have varying roles in education, whether you're an EL coordinator, world language teachers, school principals, counselors, parents, maybe some parents, maybe you have dual roles, but the more people who know about comp, the more people that we have who can help spread the word and motivate students to participate. So if you would like additional resources to help spread the word about comp in your district or among your families, those can be found on the IDOE webpage that Erica shared for comp. So hopefully if you're attending this session, you're interested in implementing comp. So here are some steps on where to go from here. So first, as I just mentioned, it's important to promote comp to both your students and their families. You'll need to choose which language assessments you're going to use, and we'll look at this more in just one moment. And then throughout the school year, maintain documentation and records of the students that are interested in achieving comp, because at the end of the year, you're going to be required to submit that data to IDOE, but only on your seniors that earn comp. Finally, the fun part, you're going to get to celebrate this accomplishment with your senior students. How students celebrate is up to each LEA, but most schools have acquired seals for diplomas or purchased special cords for graduation. They maybe publish a press release or holds a special award ceremony, or all of the above. It's up to you. So speaking of assessments, there are certain language assessments that have been approved by the Indiana State Board of Education. Those assessments can be found on the COMP website. This is a little snippet from the website that, like I said, we just updated with new stuff yesterday. So the first document on this list is a full list of the approved assessments. And then the second document is a spreadsheet that is organized by language that tells which assessments are approved for each language. This document is especially helpful if you have a student who speaks a language that isn't as commonly spoken or taught. So, schools can use any combination of approved assessments as long as you abide by the minimum score requirements. This information can be found in that approved assessments list that we just looked at, that first document that we cited. So what that means is you can use Apple to test for your Spanish students, you can use Stamp to test for your French students, or however you want to do that. So for some assessments, a student's proficiency in certain domains are assessed separately. So in these situations, a student's lowest score of their 4 domains must be the score that is used to determine eligibility. That being said, students are allowed to retake the entire assessment multiple times, or just the portion of the assessment that they need to demonstrate the required level of proficiency. So let's look at an example here. These are the scores given for a student. The required overall score to reach intermediate high on this assessment is a 6, and the student did not yet achieve that because of that 5 in writing. These scores cannot be averaged, but the student can retake just that writing portion until they achieve the necessary 6. Earlier, we mentioned record keeping and data reporting. So we're going to look at what information we will request from you at the end of the year so you can be prepared. According to the Indiana Code, all students receiving comp must have the notation that they have received comp. If a student earns world language credits through showing proficiency on a language assessment, those should also be put on the transcript at the time that they reach proficiency. So if you have a freshman who takes an assessment and they get those world language credits, it should be put on their transcript at that time. You don't have to wait till their senior year. So here are the instructions or the guidance for entering comp on transcripts. Because each student information system is different between Power School and Skyward, this might look different for each school, but many counselors and school leaders have found this information helpful when they're working with the student transcripts. So as I mentioned before, comp should only be reported for seniors, and this is the information that we're going to ask on the end of the year feedback. So we'll ask for the number of assessments of each type administered. So how many Apple assessments? How many Stamp assessments? What number of assessments of each type did they actually achieve intermediate high? And then the number of students who earn comp in each language. And then we're going to ask some specific questions about your English learners, such as the number of ELs who took an assessment, how many actually achieved the intermediate high, how many former ELs took an assessment, and then the number of former ELs who achieved intermediate high. And then finally, we're going to ask you questions about your heritage speakers. So once again, how many heritage speakers took the assessment, and then how many achieved intermediate high. I see lots of questions in the Q&A. Are there any right now, Erica, that are like, that we should pause and answer, or should I continue?
Sure, we can go ahead. Let's take a look at the question on if a parent would like their child to earn comp, how can they find out if their school participates? And if they don't, how can they encourage their child's school to participate? And we do have a list that I can share in the chat. We have a list of those schools that participated last year. And then we have a working list. That is the list of LEAs that are currently participating. So if you don't see your school listed there, then we would encourage you to reach out to either your school counselor, or you can reach out to your world language teacher and advocate for getting comp at your school. And I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you. Yes, I was gonna say we're gonna hit that at the end there, but
Yep.
the best thing to do, and honestly, our list is not very robust at this point as it was last year when we ended for comp. We definitely want to see more schools signed up, and we know that there are more students who can earn comp. Um, but a lot of the people on that list right now the schools have signed up due to parents reaching out and saying, hey, I think that my kid could earn this achievement. What can we do to participate? And that's when they kind of get it on their radar. So sometimes it does take a push, and it's just a lack of awareness that this opportunity exists. So we appreciate, like I said, everyone needs to promote, promote, promote. So, jumping back into data reporting, one final point here. This past year, we added these demographic questions as well because this information was requested of IDOE from the National Seal of Biliteracy as a whole. So this information is not required for you to submit, but it is helpful if you can submit as much information as possible with these demographics because it really helps create a national data story for students and languages. So for example, the BEST Act, which would provide states with 2-year funding opportunities to implement or improve their seal of biliteracy, was just passed in the House because of the data that was collected from each state about their programs. So if you'd like to know more information about the BEST Act, we'll share that link in the chat as well.
We also had another question about how, just giving us an estimate of how many students in the state received comp last year.
So I did some very rough data aggregation before this to look. We had a couple of people, I just need to hammer out details. So I don't want to give you a final number, but I'm going to say a ballpark is around 800 students. So I can tell you that that number is increased from the previous school year, which is a celebration, but the number of schools in total had decreased. So we have more students, but less school districts. So,
We also have another data related question about the difference, if there's a difference between ELs who took the assessment and former ELs who took the assessment. And that is something that we do collect data on, but I believe at this time we don't have those hard numbers on what that data
mhm.
looks like.
Right. We'll have that later on and we'll publish that to the comp website itself once we have the final data. We're still waiting on about 10 different schools to turn in their end of the year data. That's also why we put some hard deadlines on the year at a glance, is just so that way we're not chasing people in January.
Yeah, this is also why it's really important that if you do decide to participate, that we do, the data is self-reported by LEAs. So we really encourage you to make sure that you're keeping track to the best of your ability as you move forward with tracking who your students are and who's receiving comp.
Mhm. Thank you. All right. So finally, once you've signed up to participate and you get to the end of the school year, IDOE will email the editable digital certificate in April or May. Each school will need to fill out that certificate for each student. And as a reminder, this is an official government document, so it's not allowed to be shared or published in any way. And that's okay because I put sample there. So that is what a little snippet of last year's looks like. So now that you're all comp experts, what are your next steps? So the first step, if you haven't already done so, is to sign up to participate via JotForm. When you sign up, we're asking for a commitment to implement the Certificate of Multilingual Proficiency, provide us with 2 points of contact, and then report your data at the end of the year. There is no consequence or penalty if none of your students are able to meet the requirements, and then you'll automatically be added to IDOE's communication for comp in the future years. So as I kind of put on there, it's low risk, high reward. You get something out of it, even if you don't have many students. But if you're ready, Erica's going to drop that link one more time in the chat, or you can use the QR code for quick access from your phone. And then as a gentle reminder, the deadline to sign up is March 1st. So you might be wondering, as Erica mentioned before, if your student or if your student's school or district has signed up. We do have that information. So Erica will put the updated list of participants as of 11 a.m. this morning. I think there are 42 schools or districts signed up. And then if you're watching this on demand, this unofficial list of participants will be shared in the Indiana English Learners Moodle community, which will send you a link as well in the chat, or we'll put a link below this video, I'm sorry. Or you can always email englishlearners@doe.in.gov at any time for an update. Once that list is finalized in March, we will publish it on the comp webpage in a more official fashion. Thank you. So finally, there is funding available to help cover the cost of some of those language assessments. So each year, for the past few years, the Indiana Language Roadmap Project has offered funding assistance to help offset the cost of language proficiency exams. They're accepting applications on a rolling basis through February 15th, and students must be nominated by someone to qualify, whether that is a teacher or a counselor or a parent. And preference for this funding will be given to students who are taking assessments for less commonly taught languages because they usually have a fewer option for which test they can take, and those tests also tend to be much pricier. So please take advantage of that funding opportunity. And then finally, we're going to jump to the Q&A. If you weren't connected at the top of the hour, we're using the Q&A function to answer your questions. So if you click on that triangle, square, circle icon, it will pop open a list of activities. Click on Q&A and you can see the questions that have been submitted. So we'll jump back over to Erica and see if there's any pending questions that we have not yet answered.
Yeah, there is one question about SAT. So the question is, could you share more about PASS for SAT, and does that mean meet readiness benchmark? And I do have the 21-22 SAT standard setting State Board of Education review document. So I will share that in the chat, and that's where it lists the different benchmarks for SAT.
Mhm. And that pass score is only for the reading component, not for math, correct?
That's right.
Mhm. Okay.
Hold on, take me a minute to type this in the chat. Sorry, guys.
I'm reading the rest of the questions. Thank you, Erica.
Please excuse the typo. It should say benchmark, not benchmark.
I love a good benchmark.
Yeah, right. Sorry about that. Okay, what else do we have here? Yeah, is comp something colleges might consider when students are applying? I say in the short term, yes, they
Mhm.
do look at that. And the same with employers as well. It is something to add to the student's resume. Chelsea, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that first of all, that could lead to conversations about, placement tests as well for them. Um, we're having discussions. This is not an approved assessment yet, but I know that, for example, some schools are adopting the CLEP exams, which do offer high school credit, and I know that those can translate to college as well. So we're definitely looking at all the graduation pathways that are being created, and that can definitely act as an achievement at the end of a graduation pathway that can be taken and have weight, and it does signify that students have reached a high level of proficiency in multiple languages. Right. Adam likes to say it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Like the more students that we have that achieve comp, it also gains weight, and then more awareness about it, and the more schools that participate also kind of gives it clout behind it as well. So all of your work and all of our work does help get it to have more weight. Mhm.
That's right. Oh, and there's a new question that has come in. Do we have any data on how many ELs have been awarded 6 world language credits for passing a native language proficiency test? Last year, this was an update, correct? So I don't believe that we collect data on which ELs have been awarded 6 world language credits because that is a local decision.
Mhm. So they in code, any student who has that proficiency can earn those credits. So you could do a data request from the state to see how many students potentially, but um, they do. You can. What do I want to say here? I'm sorry, Georgina. You can award as a local decision. You can award partial credits if they don't meet that. Like let's say they're like the score sample that I gave you. If they're just missing one area that's not intermediate high, then you could award locally less than 6 credits. But if they reach that intermediate high in code, since 2016, I believe I read the code earlier today, then they have to earn those credits. So What's new from last year is that English learners can use the WIDA access score of 5.0 or higher to meet that English requisite requirement.
Okay, we do have another question. Curious about the timing of AP exams and how to recognize students when results are not known until the summer and the students have just graduated. So that is a great question, and that is in part why we collect our end of year feedback through the next academic year through September of the next academic year. So you can award that student with a certificate if they're using the AP exam to measure their world language score or the proficiency.
Yes, you
Um,
just can't retroactively like give them the test. Like you can't find a student in July, let's say, and their parents like, oh, we could have done that, and then retroactively do that. But
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Has this or is there a plan to add the certificate to graduation pathways bucket 3? We are in the works. We are talking about it. It's part of the conversation, and I know there's some LEAs who are also working towards that as well. But Chelsea,
Mhm.
I'll let you add anything to that.
I was gonna say that was a topic as of Monday, so that's a very recent conversation. But locally created pathways are being um, well, people are trying to create locally created pathways all the time. So that could be something that is in an LCP. But also, just like Erica said, we're in conversations. We do know that grad pathways are a big topic of conversation and they're always changing in all the requisites. So it's on our radar. But as of now, there's no short term plans. Let's put it that way. And then I'll
And
take, oh, go ahead, Adam. Is that
oh,
Adam?
no, I'm gonna chime in, and I'm gonna put a plug in for our next EL leadership meeting on April 20th, which will be in person, and we will be focusing on all things secondary EL. And I know that pathways will be a layer of that conversation. And we, as we've been promoting here, we want to elevate comp and multilingualism as much as we can. So I'm excited for those conversations. We'll be plugging that meeting over the course of the next few weeks. So just putting it on your radar.
Yes, thank you, Adam.
Yeah. And I see the next one. I see dual language, so I'll take that one.
Yeah, go for it.
So I know that a lot of dual language programs, for example, are starting to implement STAMP on a regular basis or regular increments. And so the question is, at what point can a student take the language assessment test? Can the eighth graders take the assessment and it count towards comp? And unfortunately, the answer is no. It must be for your ninth graders or higher. So if the eighth grader was to take it in the summer, then yes, that does count. However, I'm imagining these students in the dual language programs are taking them sometime during their eighth grade year, so that would not qualify for comp. That would give you great data though for where you're going to place them in their secondary courses, and then either support the students that aren't quite there yet. Maybe they're a little ways away, maybe they're not so little of a ways away, and you can help support them to reach that benchmark.
Yeah, I believe in our guidelines, it states that they have to be officially a ninth grade student. So that could be as soon as they've successfully completed the eighth grade.
We're doing pretty great on timing. Does anyone want to squeak in one more question before we wrap up our session for
I
today?
think we do have, oh no, that's already, never mind. I'm like, oh, I thought we had a question in the comments, but it's the same one.
Okay, so we think, oh,
Oh, the
how much
cost
does
of the test. Hmm.
Oh, Carolyn, good question. And you know what? That really differs from assessment to assessment, like I mentioned. So I know that stamp, I think, I want to say someone can put in the chat because I know I've got a couple of my dual language folks on there that do purchase stamp for elementary, but I think it's maybe $25 per student. So those aren't as costly. But mentioning those other less taught languages that IU is providing that funding for, or they're targeting those students. So, like, for example, I think someone asked about a student who speaks Vietnamese. That test, there's only two available and they could cost over $100 per test. So there's definitely a range involved in those, and it would just be looking at the different assessments offered and which languages you need, and then kind of making that work. Oh, thank you, Erica. Helping that work for your school and students. Okay, I'm going to pop back over to our presentation here and wrap things up. So If you have any additional questions after this session, please reach out to us at englishlearners@doe.in.gov. We would be happy to hop on a call or answer any quick questions that you have. Do we have one more? Thank you, Georgina. About $19.90 per assessment for stamp. All right, so once again, thank you for attending today's session of PD with IDOE. Be sure to check out the calendar events in the Learning Lab for future sessions. If you are watching the recording, your PGPs will be added to the Learning Lab automatically when the video ends.